In a rare sign of diplomacy, the U.S. and Russia and other states have conducted a massive prisoner swap. And the most high profile on the U.S. side is Evan Gershkovich, a Wall Street Journal reporter who was charged with basically espionage inside Russia. And there's been a very vocal campaign to free him. And Russia, its most prominent captive that it got back was an assassin who was convicted of killing a Chechen militant in Germany a few years ago. And look, just broadly, any act of diplomacy between the U.S. and Russia, I think, is a good thing. It's something to welcome. It shows that the sides can talk and reach solutions when they engage with it. And that's a contrast to the Biden administration's policy of not engaging in diplomacy with Russia ever since the start of the Russian invasion phase of the Ukraine war, even though, of course, the Ukraine war has been going on for 10 years. After Russia invaded, the Biden administration, rather than engage in diplomacy with Russia, basically refused to talk to Russia because they wanted to seize the opportunity to lock Russia into a quagmire, which has resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths, multiple peace opportunities blocked by the U.S., and Russia now controlling 1/5 of Ukraine's territory and taking up even more. So I hope that this prisoner exchange creates the space for further negotiations, because there's no reason why this war in Ukraine should continue. Unless Russia is so fed up with talking with the U.S. broken promises and blocking diplomacy that it just won't do it. But I hope that at least this agreement, this prisoner agreement, creates some momentum to at least try to have some diplomacy inside Ukraine.
Well, it shows diplomacy can take place anytime the U.S. wants it, but the U.S.'s arm had to be twisted. As they tacitly acknowledge when they say Putin is snatching people off the streets so that he can get deals. It's like the same thing that took place when the diplomatic channels to Gaza were completely cut off. There was only one recourse in order to restore diplomacy. So I was watching the coverage live last night. CNN was announcing it like it was an Olympic sport. And Biden and we were all hands and hearts watching Evan Gershkovich's plane descend, freedom for these American captives, innocent people who were taken off the streets, and Putin received in exchange an assassin, a hitman. And we kept hearing about the assassin, the assassin, the assassin. We never heard who his target was, except that neocons keep referring to him as Chechen dissident. Zelimkhan Kangashvili is the so-called Chechen dissident. This is Chechen dissident Zelimkhan Kangashvili, who is cut down in Berlin in dissident gear. Who was he? And what really happened there?
Well, it's amazing. Everyone refers to, as you said, as a Chechen dissident. The Washington Post calls him that. Democracy Now! Calls him that. Nobody pointed out that he was a militant who took part in the insurgency in Chechnya and, was responsible for killing a number of Russian soldiers, including prisoners of war, allegedly. And he also happened to be a CIA informant, which people don't mention for some reason. They just call him a dissident. But he worked very closely with the CIA. A few people have acknowledged that. For example, neocon pundit Michael Weiss, who Grayzone readers might remember from his active involvement in the Syria dirty war. He wrote this: a note on the victim of FSB hitman. I note on the victim of the FSB hitman that Putin got back. Zelimkhan Kangashvili wasn't just a Chechen fighter turned dissident. He was an agent of Georgia's security services and a CIA informant who helped counter both FSB and Islamist ops in Georgia. So Michael Weiss there is trying to highlight just what a hero this guy was because he was a CIA informant. That's because Michael Weiss is a neocon.
A neocon and a spook.
Yeah, well,
so from one spook honoring another.
Yeah, but it's just so funny. So he has at least the honesty to acknowledge that this guy hailed as a Chechen dissident was actually a CIA asset. And again, what everybody omits, including Michael Weiss, is that he didn't just counter the FSB. He literally killed Russian soldiers and allegedly killed Russian prisoners of war in a really gruesome way, which somehow gets whitewashed and totally omitted from the story. So instead, what we're supposed to believe is that basically Putin wanted this guy back because he wanted to defend somebody who killed a Chechen dissident, not bring somebody back who avenged the killing of Russian soldiers, which, you know, if the U.S. was in a similar situation, they'd want the exact same thing. Somebody who was convicted of killing U.S. soldiers, the U.S. would, of course, want that person back.
That's why the U.S. likely supported the Israeli assassination of Fuad Shukr, who is accused by by Israel, we don't know if it's true, of involvement in the attack on the Marine barracks in 1983 in Lebanon. It's why the U.S., this is like confirmed, supported Israel's strike, killing Imad Mugniya, who it also blames for that attack in Damascus years ago. So the U.S. has done the same thing, and Kangashvili was being given sanctuary in Berlin. It was a brazen act for sure.
So it just, you know, it's just amazing. And then people then look at this and say, well, like, look at the contrast, but, you know, a bit like Putin wants convicted killers freed, and we just want dissidents freed. And when really it misses the context that the hitman that Putin wanted freed was he killed someone who had killed Russians, and allegedly in a really gruesome way. So yeah.
Okay, so on that note, I mean, there are two more points I want to make on this prisoner swap, because Americans never get the information they deserve to be able to understand what actually took place. Because if they do, they would start to see Putin as someone other than a totalitarian psychopath who's completely irrational. And they might see him as a ruthless leader whose back has been against the wall. And there were dissidents who were exchanged here for sure. Vladimir Kara-Murza is someone who was he was a dissident, but he was backed by the U.S., possibly a CIA asset, but definitely backed by the U.S. government. You know, he didn't kill people. He was outspoken. He wanted to overthrow the Russian government and balkanize Russia. And there were other dissidents who were released from the Free Russia Foundation, things that are basically backed by the US government, that are determined to undermine the government of Russia. Kangashvili was not a dissident. It's absurd to call him that. But then you have the whole case of Evan Gershkovich. And Evan Gershkovich, okay, let's just see how The Guardian reported on this, because I decided today to see if any media outlet wanted to report on why Evan Gershkovich was arrested. This is the Wall Street Journal reporter who became sort of a cause celeb for all of the mainstream DC Beltway media people. And yeah, understandably, he's their colleague. Okay. How Evan Gershkovich was finally freed in a 500-day odyssey. We're getting a lot of reports. There's a major feature in the Wall Street Journal on how he was freed. It doesn't say much about why he was jailed in the first place. And it's really impossible to get these details. The Russian government said Gershkovich had been recruited by the CIA to collect information about the country's larger producer of main battle tanks. That seems like a kind of a major detail there. Now, let's just put aside whether he was a CIA agent or not. I can't prove that. That's what Russia says. Let's just look at how he was arrested. Evan Gershkovich was sent by his Wall Street Journal editors, apparently, by seniors, higher ups in the Wall Street Journal, to Yekaterinburg in central Russia, in a private vehicle, not taking public transportation, in a private vehicle, so kind of making it harder for the FSB to track him and drawing suspicion to him. Something that, you know, I'm told from media professionals in Russia is something that Western reporters are not supposed to do. And he goes to a munitions plant and is attempting to interview workers at the plant about what they're producing, what kind of parts, how fast they're able to produce. Okay, let's just take out whether he's a CIA agent, that whole part. We know many people in the media are CIA assets. That's for sure. But we don't know. We're not going to say he is. He's a young guy. He's not like an old seasoned veteran. Why would the Wall Street Journal and its editors send him on an assignment like that with Russia in the middle of a war that's cracking down on all anti-war activists, in a kind of in a siege mentality? Why would they send him there? And the Wall Street Journal reported that a reporter previously was hounded by the FSB and Russian police on a similar or the same assignment and had to escape from his hotel room. So why are they sending him out there? Where's the accountability at the Wall Street Journal for sending this young guy into what was basically a journalistic suicide mission? And what does it say about the Wall Street Journal and who's pulling their strings that they would want to do this?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no way a Russian reporter in the United States would go to a Lockheed Martin facility and start asking questions and not immediately have the FBI pull them off the street. It would be a front page story. So,
and not just a Lockheed Martin facility, but a Lockheed Martin facility during a war, right? This is like during a war on Russia's border.
Yeah.
And you're asking about really sensitive military secrets. There's no, if a Russian reporter did that, exactly, they'd be treated to the exact same punishment that Evan Gershkovich was subjected to. And I agree with you. The people at the Wall Street Journal who sent him on that assignment need to be held accountable. It's so reckless. They basically sent him off to be arrested. I mean, and that's what happened to him. And of course, it has to be pointed out, the campaign to free him, it came in parallel to complete disinterest in the campaign to free Julian Assange by the same establishment media reporters. And also, this news comes just as Israel kills 2 more Al Jazeera journalists. One of them, his head was blown off in its vehicle as they were covering the murder of Ismail Haniyeh. And of course, none of these journalists in the U.S. care about that. So
this is Ismail al-Ghul. Ismail al-Ghul, who is the main correspondent for Al Jazeera, beloved by the media professionals in Gaza, a young guy, 27,
yeah,
covering the genocide from start to finish, took more risks than I would take in 100 lifetimes, and was deliberately targeted for just simply trying to carry out interviews outside the destroyed home of Ismail Haniyeh, had his head blown off. And nothing. The State Department refuses to even say it was a war crime. So yeah, that is another point worth making, but I think there needs to be accountability at the top of the Wall Street Journal, and they should also be asking questions about whether the US government and some of the 3-letter agencies had pushed them to send this young reporter. Evan Gershkovich might just be a brave reporter who thought he was going to uncover a big story. All the pack of Western media people in Russia are all against the Kremlin. So it's not like out of the ordinary that he would want to get compromising info or info about Russia's defense production capacity. That doesn't mean he's a CIA agent, but it's the seniors, the higher ups at the Wall Street Journal, and what it says about this institution. Need to answer that.
Yeah, we should point out, I mean, Russia had a trial for him, but it was done very quickly, and I don't think they presented any evidence at all that he's a CIA asset. But again, I agree with you. The accountability starts at the top of the Wall Street Journal. Why was he on such a reckless assignment that the U.S. would never tolerate if there were a Russian journalist in the U.S.? And we're never going to get an answer to that question because there's never any accountability for these types of decisions. Everybody now is just going to pretend that decision wasn't made, and they're going to focus on the fact that he's free now and celebrate Biden as this great negotiator, even though, according to that Wall Street Journal article that you mentioned, Biden is not a very prominent figure. It looks like Tucker Carlson played a bigger role maybe than Biden did, and other people as well.
So yeah, this is another point I wanted to make, is this is the Wall Street Journal's big feature on how Gershkovich and the others were freed. Paul Whelan also, who, we're told he was just visiting a friend for a wedding in Moscow. We don't have time to get into that one. Just as Berlin and Washington outlined how a deal would work, Moscow was dealing with an unexpected new interlocutor, Tucker Carlson. The former Fox News host was hammering out terms for an interview with Putin for his new straight-to-social media talk show. Carlson told the president's aides that he planned to request Putin free Gershkovich on the spot during the interview. If all went well, he would take Evan home on his flight. An official close to Putin told the TV host it would be a, quote, great idea and could generate a positive response. Near the end of his 2-hour conversation, Tucker pushed his point. This guy is obviously not a spy. He's just a kid. Now, remember how much hate Tucker Carlson got from the people who wanted Evan Gershkovich out for just daring to go and interview Vladimir Putin. He was called a Russian asset. They were basically calling for him to be arrested, accusing him of treason, and he played a more pivotal role than any of them did in getting him out, because that's how you do things. That's how backdoor diplomacy takes place, is a prominent media person goes and actually meets with the president, who no one else from the government wants to be in the room with. Donald Trump tried to do it. They initiated impeachment hearings against him. So, Tucker Carlson deserves credit for this as much as anyone.
Yeah. And he won't get it.
And he'll never get it from these hacks. It's amazing to read this Wall Street Journal article, though, because they don't insult Tucker. They just call him a former Fox News host, because I guess maybe they spoke to him on background or something, but it's like the one time when they can't call him, racist extremist. And Jake Sullivan, I mean, what they say about him in this article, they make him out to be like this boy genius. It's really incredible.
And again, just to underscore the point, the fact that Tucker Carlson met with Putin, pressed him on this, it underscores that when you engage with people in a respectful way, and forget even like your tone, just you engage to begin with, which the U.S. has refused to do when it comes to the Ukraine war, you can possibly yield results. I mean, what if the Tucker Carlson approach was mirrored when it comes to diplomacy with Russia over ending the Ukraine war? I mean, the answer is obvious. You would have ended this war years ago, because there were tangible results. There was the Istanbul peace deal that almost was, until the U.S. blocked it. So again, it's more evidence that engagement can very often produce positive results, but that's not what the U.S. is interested in, because engagement undermines hegemony, which is its superseding priority. And
remember, let's just say we played a very indirect role in this at the Grayzone. This is all public. Anya Parampil tried to help Tucker Carlson get his interview with Vladimir Putin. She went to Putin's deputy foreign minister, who she interviewed at the non-aligned meeting in Venezuela, just interviewed him as a journalist about BRICS and the multipolar world, and tried to facilitate that interview. And her emails with Tucker Carlson were leaked to the press by the NSA, the National Security Agency, completely flagrantly violated the privacy and constitutional rights of a private American citizen and journalist, Tucker Carlson, just to embarrass him for trying to interview Putin. But it was through those contacts and Tucker's perseverance that he managed to get that interview and generate more momentum to free this Wall Street Journal journalist and initiate diplomacy.
And I remember when Tucker Carlson announced that on his show, he knew about it because a whistleblower from the NSA or the U.S. government came and told him that this was about to happen. He was mocked even for announcing that his emails were being surveilled and that the U.S. government was trying to undermine his attempts to interview Vladimir Putin. But look what it led to. Look what it led to. And again, nobody who actually played a positive role here by engaging with the Russian government like he did will receive any credit. And engagement, the idea of engagement, I don't think that's going to get much play either, because we're still locked into this proxy war with Russia, and everyone in power is very committed to that still.
Yeah. And Tucker was also mocked for saying that someone was going to try to assassinate Donald Trump like 2 months before it happened. So you just can't state the obvious in public sometimes. Anyway, rare diplomacy in the face of looming regional war. Doesn't seem to be any real diplomacy coming from Washington there, except probably threats, mostly sticks and not many carrots towards Iran to not defend itself. It's going to have to do it, I think, to maintain any deterrence against Israel. Because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile.